Reed Blackman, the author of Ethical Machines and the host of the podcast Ethical Machines, joins me now. Reed, it's always great to see you. I always find it both terrifying and enlightening to talk to you about artificial intelligence. Huge news from the world of AI over the past week and a half. And it starts with the fact that Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, was ousted by its board of directors. Let's start with some very basics. Who is Sam Altman?
Well, he's the co-founder of OpenAI. Everyone knows OpenAI. If they don't know the name, they at least know ChatGPT, which came out about a year ago. And so he's one of the major pushers of the most powerful form of AI we've seen ever.
And at this point, while ChatGPT is something that most people have heard of, is it fair to say, as AI startups are pretty much all over the tech landscape, that ChatGPT is your faraway front runner, making Sam Altman the most important person in artificial intelligence?
That's he's got to be top 5. I don't know if he's the number one. People are going to say things like Satya Nadella at Microsoft, for instance, is up there, but they're allies. So the two of them combined are probably they're a power couple, I suppose one could say, in the AI world. But yes, Sam Altman has, along with everyone who works at OpenAI, done a tremendous amount to both advance the technology sort of at the research level and then commercially by releasing it as ChatGPT and then making paid versions of that as well. They've got lots of corporate clients. They have a massive multi-billion-dollar partnership with Microsoft that's in peril at the moment, but it's there. So he's done a tremendous amount, and there's no question. Every lawmaker, anyone in the Senate who wants to talk about AI regulation, they're talking, among other people, to Sam Altman.
I want to stay on this for just a moment of trying to contextualize just how important or big this figure is. How big is Sam Altman? I remember reading a book, I believe it was called Sonic Boom by Greg Easterbrook, and he was talking about Silicon Valley tech investing throughout its history. And one of the maxims that they learned from, I believe it was KKR, the venture capital firm, was you don't want to be a pioneer. You don't want to invest in MySpace because pioneers get scalped. You want to invest in the settlers that come along behind the pioneers. So you want to invest in Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Is ChatGPT, in your estimation, the MySpace, the pioneer of AI, or is it a land grab, even a brain drain to try to get everyone under one roof or one umbrella, and whoever is there first will be the winner of artificial intelligence?
That's a great question. It might be too soon to tell, especially because of what's going on in the news lately, which we'll of course talk about. Plausibly, what Sam has been trying to do is make OpenAI the settler, not the pioneer who just shows up and then everyone else runs him down. There was an event a week or two ago called it was a big DevOps day, a day for developers for using OpenAI and introducing OpenAI in a more commercial way. More specifically, they were basically saying, hey, all these chatbots, the chatbot that you have, ChatGPT, you can make your own even though you're not a coder. So people were comparing it to sort of the app, like launching the App Store for Apple. This was sort of launching the App Store for AI. And so people were very excited about that. That's a move that's not, hey, we're going to try some things out. It's we're going to take over the space as best we can. So that's one thing to say. Their sights are certainly on becoming settlers, and arguably they're out in front. The other thing to say is that even though OpenAI was in some sense the new kids on the tech block, nonetheless, they had and have a very powerful partnership with Microsoft, who invested something like, $10 billion plus. So they also have, arguably, though there's nuance here, they've got resources as well to make the case that they are the settlers. Meanwhile, Google is on their heels. There are other kinds of startups like an OpenAI called, for instance, Anthropic. They're competing. So it's too early to tell. But the thing that's interesting that's going on in the news now is OpenAI may go under. It might be done.
Yes, and I want to get into that, the fall of OpenAI, the coup over Sam Altman. But one more question in order to fully understand maybe sort of the battleground, the landscape. I recently heard this comparison made as well, that artificial intelligence is a bit like electricity. To understand the moment that we're living in, and it's hard for me because I don't even use Chat GPT, much less artificial intelligence. And I haven't yet felt my life deprived
Sure.
in some way. I don't know that I've seen the benefits of it yet, Reed. And I'm certain it's coming. I'm a believer, certainly, in the way everyone is talking. And that's probably how people felt at the advent of electricity as well. Like, I don't know, maybe it was more obvious how it was going to change lives with
Yeah.
electricity
Mhm.
at the outset. But the comparison was that now electricity runs through your life as a given. You know, you don't appreciate the role on a day-to-day basis of electricity. And one day, not in a far too different future, will it not only be obvious how AI has improved your life, but you will actually take it for granted. You will be using it, you know, day in, day out,
Yep.
hour in, hour out, minute in, minute out as part of your life. Do you think that's fair? Like how what we're at the advent of, and that this is how AI will be part of our lives, just interwoven into our lives in a way we no longer can even appreciate.
Yeah, so I think the answer is yes. One thing I want to note about the electricity analogy is that I don't know if when they figured out or discovered electricity, everyone thought, "Oh, great, this is going to be great for everyone." It was the applications of that, like the light bulb. Right? So once you invented the light bulb, people immediately got the light bulb. Oh, this thing makes things light. When I can't see when it's dark out, I don't have to use a candle. There's no risk of fire. I can have it at will. They understand the application of electricity as opposed to, if you like, the technology that is electricity, if we can call electricity a technology. I mean, there were technologies to harness electricity, but again, even if you told the average person back in whenever, 1900 or whatever it was, I don't know that they would get what it would mean to their everyday lives if you said, "Oh, I built the thing to harness the power of electricity." What does that mean? I built the light bulb and this is what it does. That they get. It's the same kind of thing with AI, I think. They might not, the average person's not going to grasp what is AI, but applications of it they get. And so here's a couple of examples that you've already seen in your life. So number one, easy one, your photo software in your phone. You take a picture, it puts it into your, it recognizes, oh, that's a picture of your wife or that's a picture of your child, and it goes into the appropriate folder or whatever, so that when you search for, hey, I want to see all the pictures of my wife or all the pictures of me, it recognizes, as it were, those people in those photos. And so that's AI at work. That's AI doing face recognition. You also, if you've done international travel recently, when you go through passport control coming back into the U.S., it's kind of amazing. You don't have to go right in this long line. You go to a kiosk, it scans your face, and then it prints you out a little thing, says you're good to go. Then you hand it to the guard, and that's it. Again, that's facial recognition software that's powered by AI. A little bit more mundane, maybe. You take a look at the voicemail transcriptions, right? You don't have to listen to the voicemail. You can see the transcript. That's AI listening to the voicemail and converting it to text. So this stuff is already there. And then there's all sorts of ways that you're getting served, say, ads on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, or the way in which your feed in TikTok is constructed. That's all by virtue of how an AI is working. So people are already interacting with AI. They just don't know it. They're working with applications, and under the hood is an AI. But just like, I drive a car and there's a certain amount of horsepower under the hood. I don't actually know what's under the hood. I'm not a mechanic. But I know the application of all that technology.
You don't just have to fly internationally, by the way. I fly every week. I'm on a plane all the time. And I've seen it domestically. I mean, at Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, you will get your face scanned at some of those TSA pre-checks instead of having to go through all the driver's license. And at Madison Square Garden, I went to UFC 295, and they have that. Not everyone has to go through the metal detector anymore. They scan faces.
Interesting. Yeah.
That may be so.
And
James Dolan can kick
there.
people out of the garden that he doesn't like.
Yes, exactly. Right.
Which I've heard he does at MSG. But you're definitely getting your face scanned at Madison Square Garden.
Yep. And, on the one hand, that is really, really scary, right? I mean, we're talking about massive surveillance by corporations, by government, virtually anyone. I mean, facial recognition software is fairly widely available. On the other hand, you can think of some pretty amazing applications. A child is lost. A child is kidnapped. You run it through, you look for that face in say CCTV or something like that, and you can find the child. I mean, so there's really scary stuff, and there's really whatever the opposite of scary is, great opportunities. The question is going to be, among others, how do we make sure that it gets used in a responsible way? How do we create the proper guardrail so that no massive surveillance, we still want searches requiring a warrant, that sort of thing. How do we keep that, but also allow ourselves to, say, for instance, save children or identify the criminal in the crowd?
So let's go back to Sam Altman. I was listening to a podcast a couple of months ago, the All-In podcast with tech guys David Sachs, Chamath Palihapitiya, and they were talking about Sam Altman. And Reed, the way they talked about Altman made him seem like potentially the figure in the movie that controls, the singularity. That, and these are not just casual guys, by the way. These are tech investors, and they were talking about, even though OpenAI was a nonprofit, how Altman was capable of turning that into potential domination of the market and potential profit. In short, they were talking about Altman essentially emerging as the most powerful man on the planet through his leadership, I guess, of OpenAI and their domination of artificial intelligence. What do you think of that characterization? Because I think a lot of people listening may not be keeping up with what happened at OpenAI and the ousting of Sam Altman, but I want to talk about who this guy is and why this might be important. Do you think that is a fair characterization of Altman?
I've heard comparisons to him as sort of like the next Steve Jobs. That sounds not implausible. It's hard to say. I mean, look, let's not forget he's got lots of scientists behind him. He was a co-founder of the organization. He's clearly an impressive CEO. One thing to mention in terms of his capacities as a leader, and we can get more into the details on this, is that if he does, in fact, leave, there's a letter signed by something like 700 of 750 employees at OpenAI that said, if you don't bring Sam back, we're leaving too. You got to be a damn good CEO in order to get the vast, vast majority of employees to say, yeah, he goes, we go. That's impressive. So he's clearly an impressive CEO. He's also an impressive spokesperson for his business. I mean, he's everywhere, right? I mean, this guy is, even certainly now, but even before that, it's hard to, you couldn't talk about AI without mentioning Sam Altman and OpenAI. Regulators don't do anything without talking to Sam. The big tech companies, they're talking to Sam Altman. Like I said, Microsoft has this partnership with OpenAI. And in fact, if Sam Altman does in fact leave OpenAI, he may very well take up a job at Microsoft as CEO of a new AI research business. So he's an impressive figure for sure.
Yeah, and if that happens, if he moves from OpenAI, which as the moment we're speaking, I think there are conversations and negotiations going on between Altman and the OpenAI board to return, but there's also conversations with Microsoft to join Microsoft. And I've seen people with projections of just his movement and then potentially the 500 or 700 employees of OpenAI that would follow him, crushing OpenAI and adding billions of dollars in market capitalization to Microsoft. If that's the case, if he's that powerful, that visionary, regulators want to speak to Sam Altman. He has the ability to swing the next big thing that dramatically from one company to another. Why did OpenAI get rid of Altman?
No, nobody really knows. Nobody really knows. I mean, I've read lots of stuff on this, and there's various hypotheses, but nobody really knows, except for the people who are on the very inside. So the reason that the board gave is that they said that Sam Altman is not communicating with us sort of openly and honestly and candidly, and we're thus unable to properly exercise our responsibilities as the board. That was the official public reason that they gave. They didn't articulate, I mean, this is just a way of saying Sam lied to us, now we can't do our job. They never said what the lie is. They didn't say what the impacts of that lie have been, if there are any. So that's really, really obscure. That's sort of coming out of the official mouth of OpenAI, the board in particular. There was a report published, I think, yesterday by Karen Howe and Charles, I forgot his last name, at The Atlantic. Apparently, Karen Howe, journalist, has been writing a book on OpenAI for the past year. And she said that for the past year, there's been this giant rift between certain members on the board and Sam Altman. So in particular, the chief scientist, Ilka, what's his name? Ilka I can look it up. Ilya
Sutskever.
Yes, thank you, Ilya Sutskever. So that's the chief scientist at OpenAI. He is, if you like, an AI safety devotee. His advisor is Hinton, Jeffrey Hinton. Jeffrey Hinton is one of the godfathers of AI, who is also ringing the alarm bells around the massive, potentially negative societal impacts of AI. So we know that they're tight and that they've been upset with Sam Altman for releasing ChatGPT in the way that he did 1 year ago. So apparently the rift began about a year ago when Sam said, we're going to go public with this. We're going to raise a lot of money. We're going to take all this money from Microsoft, billions and billions of dollars. We're going to sort of change the structure of what we are from a nonprofit to a capped for-profit business. And that's when, according to this article in The Atlantic, the ideology or the goals of the board, really wanting to make sure that people are safe from the powerful AI, diverged from what appeared to be the commercial interests of Sam Altman.
So the individual you're talking about, there's only 4 members of the OpenAI board, at least from what I can gather from the Wall Street Journal. There's 4 members, one of whom is continuing to negotiate, reports are, with Sam Altman. His name is Adam D'Angelo. The one that a lot of people are looking at is Ilya Sutskever that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
But interestingly, it says here in the journal that Sutskever was one of the hundreds of employees at OpenAI who signed a letter Monday pledging to quit the company if the current board doesn't resign. If he's the guy that led the coup against Altman, what's he doing signing this letter among with the other employees to leave if they don't rehire Altman?
It's bananas. Like, it's bananas. The only explanation that I could think of is that he just didn't know what he was getting into. He didn't realize how powerful Sam Altman is, both in sort of the bigger AI scene, but also particularly within OpenAI. I don't think he realized how powerful Sam Altman is, how disruptive it would be, and that it would actually cost the existence of OpenAI. I mean, if Sam Altman leaves OpenAI, goes to Microsoft, takes with him 99% of the employees, I don't see how OpenAI lives. They're supposed to have $1 billion in revenue, but with all those employees leaving, how are they going to service those corporations or the businesses that is supposed to generate that $1 billion in revenue? What's more, Microsoft holds the GPUs. They hold the compute power that OpenAI runs on. So if Microsoft decides to slow that down or take that GPU that it was going to give to OpenAI and give it to Sam Altman's new AI research company within Microsoft, OpenAI is dead in the water, and they could try to sue Microsoft, but by then the ship has sailed. So my best guess for Ilya is that did not see the impacts of what he was doing, the second, third, and fourth level impacts, realizes, oh my God, I started to think that if Sam leaves, OpenAI is probably done. And the whole thing's been for, just giving it all to Microsoft without even actual proper acquisition of the company.
What is the revenue structure, Reed? Forgive me, this is where I don't use it just yet. Is it front-facing, consumers paying for some heightened service or subscription, or is it B2B? Is it licensing your technology to other businesses to integrate this AI into whatever it is they do?
Yeah, there's some consumer-facing stuff, but from what I gather, and I don't know the breakdown, but I think that the vast majority of it is B2B. So it's the vast majority of it is businesses using an API, which is basically a piece of software that allows businesses, their software, to talk to OpenAI software. So they can use ChatGPT. They have access to it. And so they pay a decently high price for that. Plus, usually it's about number of seats. So how many different people can call into OpenAI from, Fortune 500 company, whatever the name happens to be. And so there's a tremendous amount of business coming from those corporations who are trying to build their own software on the back of OpenAI's ChatGPT.
Now I'm going to ask you a question that I just can anticipate the ways in which you're going to dodge it. But if Sam Altman is the biggest power, the biggest individual, the biggest personality in what will soon be seen as the land grab of the 21st century's electricity, and the OpenAI board ousted Sam Altman over different visions of artificial intelligence between commercialization and nonprofit, there are all kinds of, as you and I have discussed in the past, ethical questions about artificial intelligence, this seems to be the most important question. Like, is he benevolent? I mean, if this is our new,
Yeah.
if this is our new human God,
Yeah.
if he is the man that controls artificial intelligence to the extent that it can be controlled or programmed,
Yeah.
defining its ethics, is Sam Altman benevolent?
Yeah, this is a great question. I won't dodge it. The question, I don't think. So so look, he strikes me as a very good politician, frankly, and he's said a lot of the right things that you'd want him to say on the ethics and safety front. In fact, OpenAI was founded with the mission of safeguarding humanity from artificial general intelligence, or AGI, the kind of intelligence that is superior to the intelligence of human beings. So he signed up for, co-founder of OpenAI. OpenAI has an explicit ethical goal. He preached that goal for many, many, many years. He made it the case. They made the governance structure of OpenAI such that the board could oust him, which he said, he's on record as saying, that's really important because this kind of power should not be in the hands of a single person, and it shouldn't be in the hands of big tech. So that's the story he's been saying for years. Now, what's so interesting and ironic about all this is that the board tries to oust him. Number one, now they're trying to undo it. So maybe the board didn't have the kind of power that Sam thought that they did, because they don't have the power if by ousting him they destroy themselves, right? And the second thing is that, how many hours was it between him saying this is not for the big tech companies, this is for the people? Between him saying that and then going to one of the biggest tech firms in the history of tech firms, who were going to, potentially anyway, work for Microsoft. So it's hard for me to see his actions as anything other than hypocritical. Going to Microsoft. I'm not saying it's all things considered unwise of him to do so or something like that. It's just I can't square the circle of him saying on day one, this should not be in the hands of big tech. Day two, either you take me back or I go to Microsoft. That there's something inconsistent there. I don't see how you make it not inconsistent.
Is this the future of humanity, debating whether or not the new leader of the most powerful technology, and this is not my characterization, I'm just picking up what
Yeah.
others are putting down, at
Yeah.
least of our lifetime. I mean, artificial intelligence, is the future of humanity debating and hoping whether or not the man who controls artificial intelligence is benevolent?
I mean, a little bit. I mean, look, there's these giant tech companies who have trust and safety teams or ethics teams. Microsoft, for instance, has they call it responsible AI. So a responsible AI office, they have a chief responsible AI officer, and one hopes that this actually, that they actually live up to the values that they say they want to live up to. They were my estimation, a bit fast with the way they rolled out GPT 4.0 in their Bing search engine. But they at least appear to have a commitment to trust, safety, ethics, that sort of thing. Others don't. I mean, Meta recently, it's unclear. So Microsoft also at one point dissolved their ethics and society board, committee or department. Meta recently dissolved. This was in the news last week, but it got lost in the shuffle with Sam Altman. Meta just dissolved their responsible AI team. Twitter did that, a year or so ago when Musk took over, disbanded the trust and safety team. It's not just Sam Altman, it's all these tech companies who are developing these technologies. Are they going to genuinely invest and back their ethics or trust and safety teams? And we're seeing an exodus of those teams, or rather a dissolution of those teams by the big tech companies, not doubling down on them, unfortunately. So insofar as Sam is one of those people, to the extent that he doesn't push or double down on trust and safety and instead focuses on commercial activity at the expense of ethics, safety, responsibility, yeah, we have reason to worry.
This always takes me back to first principles. It truly does. Like, on the one hand, what individuals do I entrust to sit on a board of trust and ethics, safety and ethics?
Yeah.
I don't, and I think in the case of Twitter and before Elon Musk, I think the answer would be I trust very few people that would
Sure.
sit on a board of safety and ethics. And so I don't want to entrust humanity to these individual tech boards who define what is ethical. I also don't feel very good about entrusting all of it to one individual, as I would be forced to sit here on a continuous basis and say,
Yeah.
do I believe that Elon Musk is truly dedicated to free speech? Do I truly believe that Sam Altman is good for humanity? On another hand, I don't want to, I mean, citizen power, individual freedom is ensured through essentially two mechanisms. One, voting, and that is through government. And so that's diluted, though. That's watered down through, now 2 centuries of Washington, D.C. politics that's limited the voice of the individual. So do I trust the government to regulate this technology in some ethical way? My answer will be inevitably no. And then the only other way that we have power is through choice, consumer choice. What we choose to do with our dollar, our votes. That's what a dollar is. It's a vote. A dollar is a vote of trust and endorsement of something. When you spend, it's at its most basic level. When you trade someone your dollar, which you got for your hard-earned time or your hard-spent time, you are endorsing in exchange for convenience or bettering your life some way, whatever it is that person is doing. And so that's our most basic level of control. And I just wonder, as this fight goes on and these guys compete with one another, I guess it's probably the first principle we have to endorse, some level of competition between all these AI companies, that we will through our choices, our individual choices, choose, elect, buy, patronize some ethical version of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I think that's roughly right. So there's a bunch to say. That was a lot. So there's a couple of things to say here. Let's start with the sort of corporations having different ethical standards thing. That's generally fine. I'm perfectly fine living in a country where we have Patagonia and we have Hobby Lobby and we have everything in between. Very different political ideologies, different actions as a result of those ideologies. I don't want government to shut down Hobby Lobby. I don't want government to shut down Patagonia or anything in between. Now, if we have the KKK shop, all right, that's a problem. But as long as we don't have that, as long as things are sort of
that though, Reed, that's not against the law, like in the United States of America.
Yeah,
that's true. A KKK shop should not, in theory, be shut down by the government. It should lose by the power of the individual choice and lack of patronization.
Yeah, on the condition that they're not actually engaging in, say, acts of lynching. Agreed.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I do think that, Twitter is going to have different ethical standards than Facebook, which is going to have different standards than maybe Instagram, even though they're owned by the same company, which is going to have different standards than et cetera, et cetera. And so, then I think consumers are going to spend here versus there. And, that's fine. That's not a nightmare scenario. That's just, the fact that different people have different beliefs and we live in a diverse society with different political and ethical beliefs and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's fine. What can government do? And so I think that when we say, do I trust the people on the ethics board at Twitter or X or Meta or whatever it is, I don't know. I trust that they'll do something that's not illegal, that they'll keep things at least within the bounds of legality, and that they will hold not bonkers ethical views. That's sort of my first standard.
I trust neither of those things.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's a gray area, but
I think I've got the backing of violations of the First Amendment and bonkers morality from these trust and safety boards over the past 5 years on my side.
Yeah.
I don't know where your rosy view comes from, but that's my dark view.
I mean, there are definitely views I disagree with, but I disagree without thinking that they're, in some cases anyway, I disagree without thinking that they're crazy. But anyway, we have to get into particular decisions to sort of settle on that. Now, with regards to government's an interesting thing. Right now, you might think about government regulation as being process-oriented or outcome-oriented. So when you think about outcome-oriented regulations, think about things like, I don't care what you do, just make sure that this car gets 50 miles to the gallon by 2035 or whatever it is, right? It's about the outcome. It's got to be able to go this far on a gallon of gas. Process-oriented is not like that. It's sort of like the law requires you to engage in this kind of process. So think about the criminal justice system and trial by jury and how a trial has to unfold. There are process-oriented laws about how that's got to go. So we regulate or we make certain processes legal or illegal. When it comes to AI, there's no way we're going to get, at least for AI generally, outcome-based regulations like we do with automobiles. And the reason is that the applications for AI are in the, I don't know, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions. I mean, there's tons of output. So it can't be something like, you've got to produce this with AI.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to happen. And so right now, what all the regulations are doing, they're focused necessarily on process. If you're going to build AI, you got to do this stuff. You got to, it's a lot around documenting the significant decisions that are made, being transparent about those decisions. And then you can still have a Twitter or an X and a Meta and a Patagonia and a Hobby Lobby, and they just have to sort of be careful how they in the way by which they assess their AI as they're building it. But there's nothing that I've seen and you can't produce these outcomes unless those outcomes are already established as being illegal. For instance, running afoul of anti-discrimination law.
So I would say the only other application of government that I would be interested in figuring out, and we won't today, I've got to go in just a few minutes here with you, but is government that further empowers the individual on that third category I gave you of voting with our dollar. And that is government being very willing to consider antitrust violations. So the way to protect us is to ensure that no single company and no single individual can dominate this market, can become the only option.
And that has been at play for the last couple of years, where that's what they're setting their sights on. For instance, breaking up Google, or trying to anyway. And so, not having a monopoly is going to be important. For what it's worth, Google and Microsoft are still in heated competition. There's a vibrant AI startup world where there's lots of competition. And so we're still very early on. So while, you might worry about Microsoft and Google, Amazon.
Or Sam Altman.
Or Sam Altman, sure. Dominating, it's too soon for that. Any more than you would say. I mean, the iPhone isn't huge market share, but they're still Android, right? So I agree, but generally I agree with the point, with your point. And there's going to be an empirical question as to when do we get to the point, or what makes it the case that we're at the point that there's too much power concentrated in too few corporations, or, to your point, individuals. It's a real problem.
Well, I think I've said this in the past, that I feel so ignorant on this subject, and yet I feel like, without buying into hype and hyperbole, it is, if not the primary story that matters, the one that threatens to change everything about how we live on a daily basis and how we govern ourselves, both collectively and individually. And I think you and I will be talking a lot in the future, Reed, about continuing to help me to understand this in its application. And it seems like we're at the edge of the frontier. We're staring out across the Great Plains. We know it's full of hostile Indians, and yet we have to push west, and we got to figure out the best way to do that. And as always, like I said, it is terrifying, but also enlightening to talk to you, Reed Blackman.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Hey, it's Will Cain. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Cain Podcast for full episodes right now.